On an election night, I was in the worst possible place one could be to get the news. I was in the Javits Center. The Javits Center was supposed to be the place where Hillary Clinton was going to accept her historic nomination to be the first female president of the United States. Obviously, we all know that that didn't happen, and this image is exactly how all of those people felt inside the Javits Center. I couldn't leave the Javits Center that night. I stayed well past 1 a.m. I couldn't leave because leaving would mean that I was going to have to accept our new reality. I was going to have to accept what we had done. And that was that Donald Trump was going to be the next president of the United States of America. Yes, boo. When my lack of acceptance was actually overpowered by my sadness, my despair, my fear, I decided I had to get out of that place because it was horrible. And as a filmmaker, as a writer, as a director, I also knew that this moment in time was transformational for me, that I had to remember as many details as I possibly could. So I started to pay attention. I started to be in the moment. As I walked across the now empty Javits Center, I remember hearing my heels clicking and echoing through the space. I remember the people, all of the people in dark corners, crying, or whispering to one another, or in the worst possible cases, they were walking around, staring into nothing. And it literally felt like the apocalypse. I know that's being dramatic, but in that space, we felt as if our world was over. I remember seeing a balloon floating in a corner, and I kept on walking out. And then I passed these two women that were sitting on the floor, holding on to each other. And I couldn't just walk by them. So I turned around to sear their memory into my mind forever. And before I knew it, I was walking towards them. They looked so broken and they looked so lost. And I didn't know what I was gonna say because I myself was broken and I myself was lost. And I knelt down in front of them, and they were so young. Clearly, this was their first election. And tears were streaming down their face. And I said the only thing that I could figure to say, and that was, it's going to be okay. I don't know how, and I don't know when, but it will be okay. And they were crying, and I was crying, and we couldn't really talk to one another. We just nodded in agreement. And I found some sort of comfort knowing that I wasn't alone. And I got up and I left. November 8th, 2016 was the day that this country's heart skipped a beat. It became irregular. Some thought it would flatline and that it did flatline. But I never believed that. I am an artist, and I study the human heart, so I always had hope. My questions while I study the heart, is what makes a heart beat with joy? What makes a heart break with sadness? And since the election, I've been asking myself the question, what is the heart of this nation? What is the heart of my neighbor? What is the heart of my soul? And as artists, we continue to ask more questions, not necessarily getting to answers, but trying to find the question that will give us guidance. And I think I've come to that question. And that question is, what makes a person's heart open. And what makes a person's heart close? Today, this country is suffering from a mass contraction of the heart. And I firmly believe that it is artists, it is the creative community that can reopen the heart of America. That is our responsibility and our duty. The day after the election, I was sick to my stomach, just like most of you, if not all of you in this room. I didn't want to get out of bed. I wanted to stay in my cocoon. I wanted to feel safe. But I knew that I couldn't, because I had made a promise to those two young women that somehow it was going to be okay. So I did the only thing that I could do. I got to work. I went to my office, and I pulled out my phone, and I called every artist that I knew. I called my artistic community to look for answers, to question, to see what it was that we were going to do in this moment. What was the role of art under the Donald Trump administration? What was the role of artists? Did art even matter? Now that people were going to be deported to their deaths, what could we actually do as artists? I spent 2 days talking to people. It didn't matter if you were my best friend, if I met you at a film festival, if you were a writer I respected or a producer that I wanted to pitch a film to. I was bold, unapologetic, and we had impassioned debates. We cried, we were angry, we found fault in some of the things that we did. But at the end of those 2 days of talking, I realized that the artistic community, we as artists, were more valuable, were more important than ever. Art is not simply to be used for entertainment when society is at its most convenient and happy moments. Art is the light that illuminates society when we are at our darkest. Art is the light and our beacon of hope. And artists, we create culture. We give this country and have the ability to give this country hope. Art is the truth. And I understood in the deepest part of my heart that artists needed to rise up. We could not remain silent. If we are to revitalize the heart of this country, then artists must lead the way. And we, individual artists, need to figure out, how do we get onto this on-ramp? What do we do in our everyday lives, in our work? How do we open up the heart of America? What are our contributions? My contribution was to be in service of the Women's March. I started off as the co-director of partnerships of the Women's March. But my passion, my love, my faith in my artistic community led me to organizing the artists. The week before Christmas, we were organizing out of our headquarters, which happened to be the offices of Mr. Harry Belafonte. And I had two extraordinary visitors. The first was my son, Mateo Ali, who at the time was 3 years old. I was working 15-hour days, so I was not seeing my son as much as I wanted to, or I should have been. I wasn't putting him to bed at night. I was working nonstop on the weekends. So my partner brought him to the office, and I had a very special few hours with Mateo. I read him stories, we played, and in the midst of all of that, in walks Mr. Harry Belafonte. Exactly. It was a woo moment. I will never forget the moment that I shared with Mr. B, as we affectionately call him, and Mateo. Mr. B told us about so many things, about his time organizing the March on Washington, about his trials and tribulations, about the lessons learned, about how to move forward, about the importance of organizing and letting the administration know that we were ready, able, willing, and organized to take down whatever it was that he was going to put in front of us. But Mr. B, he said something to me that I will never forget. He said, When the movement is strong, the music is strong. When the movement is strong, the music is strong. And this is a man who knows of what he speaks. He organized the artists for the March on Washington. He got Mahalia Jackson there, and he got Bob Dylan and Joan Baez and Sidney Poitier. This is what he did. He has spent his life organizing artists. And we at the Women's March, we knew that our movement was strong. But now we had to make our music strong. So we decided that we were going to organize an artist committee. We had over 150 artists come on board to support us. They told their own stories and they served as surrogates for the march. But more importantly than that, we had tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands artists creating every day memes, graphics, posters, videos about equal pay for equal work, immigration reform, Black Lives Matter, you name it, it was being created. Pink pussy hats came from artists. And with that, with tens of thousands of artists creating, the Women's March culture, our vision, our desires came into the mainstream American heart. We became the culture of the United States and ultimately also the world. Artists did that. That is the power that we have. We at the Women's March, we're no longer focused on just buses and how many statistics were being accomplished and how many people were showing up. We at the Women's March, with artists by our side, we're opening the heart of America. Paul Robeson says, artists are the gatekeepers of truth. We are civilization's radical voice. We, artists, use our voice to create culture, to transform and uplift communities. And therefore, it is our duty and our responsibility to take a leadership role in this movement of resistance. We, artists, have the ability to tap into the human heart and reflect, honestly, the people of this nation. We, artists, serve as the creative, compassionate contrast to what is currently playing out every day in this country. We, artists, we create worlds out of our imaginations and present them to people when they think it is impossible. We, artists, we inspire people to love when the easy thing to do is to hate. And make no mistake, this moment in history will dictate the future of this country for decades to come. And we in the resistance are trying every day to make sure that this world that we want for our future children, our current children, and our grandchildren is a world where they will be safe, where they will be loved. Doesn't matter what they look like, who they are, or who they love. And the resistance is made up of radicals and moderates. It's made up of Hillary supporters and Bernie bros. It's made up of first-time marchers and lifetime protesters. And we could not have imagined on January 21st the successes that we've had in the past 9 months. We couldn't have imagined that we would have protected and saved healthcare 3 times, and we will do it again. We could not have imagined that we would have people in the administration resigning left and right. Our wins have been incredible, and we have been inspired by the fierce bravery of the disability community when they go out to be arrested for their right to health care. Our hearts have soared with love when 40,000 people marched on Boston standing against white supremacy and xenophobia and hate. And we have been stirred to action by the bravery of the young people that are willing to risk arrest and be deported because they want this country to know that they will never go into the shadows because this is the only country they have ever known. And all of the success of the resistance has been done without our strongest and our most able tool, and that is the artists. Yes, artists are standing in solidarity with us. Yes, they are agreeing with what we are doing, but imagine if artists were creating the way that they did for the Women's March, if posters and art and songs and videos were being made by tens and thousands and hundreds of thousands of people, if the culture of the resistance was actually the culture of the United States, if that was the mainstream consumption, imagine where we would be. Artists, we need you. Because with you, our world is possible. In this room of artists and creatives and thinkers, I want to ask you to not let your work, our work, simply reflect the world. Let our work engage deeply in the world that it is living in. Let our work be a hammer with which to shape the world we want. And that hammer can be subtle and revolutionary and beautiful like moonlight. It can inspire and educate and emphasize glory like Dolores. And it can shatter your heart to a million pieces, and then you pick it back up and promise to do the work the way that Turtles Can Fly does. But do the work that engages. Point your camera towards the stories that need to be told. Pick up your pen and write the stories of the communities that are the most vulnerable, and do it with love and dignity and respect. Artists, in these dark times, we can be the light. Seek truth. Imagine. And go and make art that will open the heart of this country, and you will be saving us from ourselves. Thank you. Thank you.